Hi, welcome to Conflict Story, where we bring you the best and most fascinating stories just for you. Let's dive right into one of those stories. It begins like this.
It was a sunny morning in mid-July, with the lake shimmering under the bright sunlight and the gentle hum of nature surrounding my family's secluded cabin. As a 35-year-old architect, this lakeside retreat was my haven from the pressures of city life. I had driven my vintage Jeep Cherokee up to this peaceful spot the night before, ready for a weekend of solitude and maintenance work. Coffee in hand, I was enjoying the serene view from the deck when the sound of tires crunching on gravel disrupted the tranquility. Curious, I stepped around to the front of the cabin, where I saw a white luxury SUV parked in my driveway. Out stepped a woman in her late 40s, her bobbed hair perfectly coiffed and sunglasses perched atop her head. She wore designer athleisure and carried herself with an air of entitlement that screamed trouble. From the back seat emerged two teenagers, both absorbed in their phones, exuding the universal boredom of kids dragged along on a parental mission. The woman, whose smile was as superficial as her manicure, approached me confidently. "Good morning. I'm here to check in," she announced, holding out a hand as if expecting keys to magically appear in it. Confused, I replied, "Check in? I think you've got the wrong address. This isn't a rental property." Her smile faltered, and a look of annoyance crept in. "Don't be ridiculous. I booked this cabin online weeks ago. My family has been looking forward to this vacation. This is 123 Lakeview Lane, right?" "It is, but this property has been in my family for years. We've never rented it out," I explained calmly. "If you booked it online, I'm afraid you've been scammed." Her cheerful facade crumbled entirely. "Scammed? Impossible! I have a confirmation email," she snapped, rummaging through her designer purse before brandishing her phone. "Here, see?" I glanced at the screen. The listing did feature my cabin, but it was clearly a fake advertisement. I tried to explain, but her irritation quickly turned to anger. "Listen, I've already paid for this place. We drove hours to get here, and I'm not leaving. Now hand over the keys and let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be." I took a step back, my voice firm. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for your trouble, but this is private property. I can't let you stay here." Her face flushed red as she barked, "Do you know who my husband is? He's an attorney, and he'll sue you for this." The teenagers cringed in embarrassment, pleading with her to drop it and leave, but she waved them off. "Girls, unload the car. We're staying." As she attempted to march past me, I stepped in her path. "I'll have to ask you to leave. If you refuse, I'll call the police." Her expression darkened, and without warning, she slapped me across the face, a stinging blow that left me momentarily stunned. Recovering quickly, I straightened and fixed her with a steely gaze. Reaching into my back pocket, I pulled out my badge. "Ma'am, I'm an off-duty police officer. You just assaulted me." Her bravado dissolved instantly. "Wait, you're a cop. I didn't mean to. It was just a misunderstanding." I calmly recited her rights as I placed handcuffs on her wrists. The teenagers stood frozen, one whispering, "Mom, why would you do that?" She began protesting, shouting about police brutality and threatening to sue. I ignored her outburst and called for backup. When my colleague arrived to transport her to the station, she was still yelling about knowing powerful people who would ruin me. I felt a pang of sympathy for her children, who looked utterly humiliated as they called their father to come pick them up. As the patrol car disappeared down the driveway, I returned to my cabin, shaken but determined not to let this bizarre encounter ruin my weekend. Little did I know, this was just the opening act of a larger drama, one that would test my resolve and my faith in justice. The following week, I was summoned to the station by my chief, who informed me that the woman, now identified as Linda Cartwright, had hired a high-profile attorney. Not only was she claiming her actions were justified, but she was also accusing me of using excessive force during the arrest. It was clear the Cartwrights were leveraging their wealth and connections to discredit me. The ensuing weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles and media scrutiny. My integrity was questioned, and false allegations flew. Yet amidst the chaos, an unexpected ally emerged. Linda's oldest daughter, Sophia, reached out to me, willing to tell the truth about what had happened. With her testimony and recorded evidence of her mother's lies, the tide began to turn. In the end, justice prevailed. Linda faced charges for assault, trespassing, and filing false reports. Her attempts to manipulate the system had backfired spectacularly, leaving her reputation in tatters. Though the ordeal had been exhausting, it reaffirmed my commitment to standing up for what's right, no matter the odds. And as for my cabin, it remains a sanctuary, albeit one with newly installed security cameras. Every time I sit on the deck with a cup of coffee, I'm reminded of that fateful encounter and the strength it took to face down an entitled Karen and emerge victorious. The legal battle with Linda Cartwright was far from over. What had started as a bizarre confrontation on my family's property quickly escalated into a full-blown campaign of harassment. The Cartwrights, particularly Linda's husband, Gregory, seemed determined to turn the situation into a spectacle. Within days of her release on bail, Linda and Gregory hired a prominent attorney, Daniel Harris, whose reputation for sensationalizing cases preceded him. Suddenly, my actions were being scrutinized in local news outlets, with headlines like, "Off-duty officer oversteps, Cartwright family claims police misconduct." The media's willingness to entertain their narrative added fuel to the fire, and I found myself at the center of a public relations nightmare. To make matters worse, Gregory Cartwright leveraged his connections in the community to mount a smear campaign against me. Flyers accusing me of police brutality were anonymously distributed around my neighborhood, and an online petition calling for my suspension gained traction. At work, I could sense the unease among some of my colleagues, though my chief remained supportive. The stress was taking a toll. Nights that should have been spent peacefully at the cabin were now restless, consumed by phone calls with my lawyer and strategizing with my family. The lake, once a refuge, now felt like a battleground. Amid the chaos, an unlikely ally emerged in Linda's daughter, Sophia. The same girl who had stood by silently during her mother's arrest reached out to me through a private message on social media. Her words were hesitant but sincere. "Officer, I want to help. I can't stay quiet anymore." We arranged a discreet meeting at a coffee shop in a neighboring town. Sophia, a poised 17-year-old, carried the weight of her family's dysfunction in her demeanor. Over a cup of tea, she opened up about the toxic dynamics of her household. "My mom has always been intense," she admitted, nervously twisting her cup. "But this time she's gone too far. I know what she did to you was wrong. She's been lying to everyone, even my dad." Sophia revealed that she had secretly recorded conversations between her parents, where they strategized about how to discredit me. In one particularly damning clip, Linda could be heard laughing about how no one would believe some cop over us. Gregory's voice chimed in, urging her to keep the pressure on until he folds. Armed with this new evidence, my lawyer immediately filed for a countersuit, accusing the Cartwrights of defamation and malicious prosecution. The recordings, along with Sophia's willingness to testify, turned the tide in my favor. But the Cartwrights didn't back down easily. Gregory hired a PR firm to spin their story further, portraying their family as victims of an overzealous officer with a vendetta. The smear campaign reached its peak when an anonymous tip, almost certainly planted by the Cartwrights, alleged that I had a history of misconduct, a claim that was quickly disproven but left lingering doubts among some. The pressure mounted as the case approached its first court hearing. Friends and colleagues urged me to settle, but I refused. "If I back down now, it sets a dangerous precedent," I told my lawyer. "People like them can't be allowed to abuse their power and get away with it." On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Linda sat next to Gregory, her polished facade firmly in place, while Sophia sat a few rows behind them, avoiding eye contact. As the proceedings began, our legal team methodically dismantled their accusations. The judge's face hardened as he listened to the recordings, his disapproval evident. When it was Sophia's turn to testify, she spoke with quiet conviction. "My mother has always thought she could get away with anything," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "But what she did to Officer Taylor was wrong. She lied about what happened, and she tried to ruin his life to cover her own mistakes." Linda's composure cracked. She whispered furiously to Gregory, who shot her a warning look. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted as it became clear that their narrative was falling apart. By the end of the day, the judge ruled in my favor, dismissing their claims of misconduct and allowing my countersuit to proceed. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. I kept mine brief. This case was never about revenge. It was about holding people accountable for their actions. No one is above the law. The Cartwrights left in silence, their carefully constructed image in tatters. Sophia lingered briefly to offer a small smile and a heartfelt "thank you" before slipping away into the crowd. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of relief. The fight wasn't over yet, but the truth was finally prevailing. The fallout from the court hearing was both swift and dramatic. News of the judge's decision spread quickly, with local media now painting Linda Cartwright and her husband Gregory as the villains of the saga. Headlines like "Cartwright's exposed, lies and manipulation uncovered" dominated the news cycle, turning their public image into a spectacle of ridicule and disdain. Despite their attempts to maintain appearances, the pressure began to unravel their carefully curated lives. For me, however, the ordeal was far from over. While the legal victory was a step in the right direction, the Cartwrights' relentless pursuit of vengeance persisted. Gregory, undeterred by the courtroom defeat, vowed to appeal and instructed their lawyer to explore any avenue to undermine me. Meanwhile, Linda seemed to retreat into the shadows, avoiding public appearances altogether. Yet there were whispers of her involvement behind the scenes, attempting to recruit allies within the community to reignite their smear campaign. It was during this turbulent time that I began to receive anonymous threats. Letters were left in my mailbox, and one particularly unsettling note was taped to the windshield of my Jeep. It read, "You think you've won, but this isn't over." While I reported the incidents to my department, the lack of tangible evidence meant there was little they could do beyond advising increased vigilance. Determined not to let fear dictate my life, I doubled down on security measures at my lakeside cabin. New surveillance cameras were installed, and motion-activated floodlights now illuminated the property. Despite these precautions, the tranquility I once found at the lake felt elusive. Every rustling leaf and distant car engine set my nerves on edge. Meanwhile, support from the community began to emerge in unexpected ways. Neighbors I barely knew stopped by to offer words of encouragement. A group of local business owners even started a fundraiser to help cover my legal expenses. Their kindness was a stark contrast to the vitriol of the Cartwrights, and it reminded me that not everyone could be swayed by wealth and influence. In the midst of this, Sophia continued to be a beacon of hope. She remained steadfast in her commitment to the truth, despite the personal cost. Her relationship with her parents had become strained to the breaking point. Gregory had forbidden her from speaking to me or anyone associated with the case, but Sophia's resolve only grew stronger. She confided in me during one of our meetings. "I'm tired of living in their shadow. It's time I make my own choices." One evening, just as I was beginning to feel a sense of normalcy returning, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. On the other end was a man identifying himself as an investigator hired by the Cartwrights. His tone was oily and condescending. "Mr. Taylor," he began, "I'm calling to offer you a chance to resolve this situation amicably. The Cartwrights are willing to drop their appeal if you agree to issue a public apology and refrain from further legal action." I couldn't help but laugh. An apology? For what? For being assaulted on my own property and standing up to their lies? The investigator's tone sharpened. "Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be. They have resources, Mr. Taylor, and they're prepared to use them. A public apology would save everyone time and money." I leaned back in my chair, my resolve hardening. "Tell the Cartwrights that I'm not interested in deals or apologies. If they want to keep fighting, I'll see them in court again. And this time, it won't just be about me. It'll be about holding them accountable for every underhanded thing they've done." The investigator's sigh was audible. "You've made your choice then. Don't say we didn't warn you." The line went dead, leaving me with a mix of anger and determination. It was clear the Cartwrights weren't going to back down without a fight, but neither was I. As the weeks turned into months, the situation reached a boiling point. The Cartwrights' appeal was dismissed on procedural grounds, effectively ending their legal maneuvers. Yet their relentless harassment culminated in one final act of desperation. Late one night, my cabin's security system alerted me to movement near the driveway. I watched on the monitor as a shadowy figure approached the front door and began spray painting obscenities across it. Calling the police, I kept my eyes on the screen until the patrol car arrived, its flashing lights cutting through the darkness. The figure tried to flee but was quickly apprehended. To my astonishment, it was Gregory Cartwright himself, disheveled and clearly intoxicated. His arrest marked the final unraveling of their campaign against me. With Gregory facing charges for vandalism and trespassing, and Linda's reputation in ruins, the Cartwrights' influence waned. Sophia, now estranged from her family, found solace in moving out and pursuing her education, far from their toxic environment. For me, the resolution was bittersweet. While justice had been served, the experience left scars that would take time to heal. But as I stood on the deck of my cabin one crisp autumn morning, coffee in hand, I felt a sense of peace returning. The lake stretched out before me, calm and unwavering, a reminder that even in the face of chaos, some things remain steadfast. The events following Gregory Cartwright's arrest marked the final unraveling of a saga that had consumed months of my life. His late-night vandalism attempt, fueled by desperation and intoxication, became the proverbial nail in the coffin for the Cartwrights. Local media pounced on the story, painting Gregory's arrest as the dramatic conclusion to their failed campaign of harassment. The community, once divided, now rallied firmly against the Cartwrights. In court, Gregory's attorney attempted to downplay the incident, citing immense personal stress as a mitigating factor. However, the judge was unimpressed. Gregory was sentenced to 6 months of probation and ordered to pay restitution for the damages to my cabin. Meanwhile, Linda, still reeling from the earlier court defeats, withdrew from public life entirely. The Cartwright name, once associated with influence and affluence, had become a cautionary tale about the perils of entitlement and unchecked arrogance. Sophia, now living independently, blossomed in her newfound freedom. She kept in touch, updating me on her progress as she started college in another state. Her resilience and courage remained a bright spot in an otherwise grueling ordeal. She even sent me a heartfelt thank you letter, expressing gratitude for standing firm and showing her that integrity could prevail. As for me, life slowly returned to normal. The cabin, once a battleground, reclaimed its role as a sanctuary. The repairs were completed, the graffiti scrubbed away, and new flowers planted where tire tracks had scarred the driveway. The lake's serene waters once again offered solace, reminding me of the strength that comes from enduring adversity. One sunny afternoon, I received a call from the local sheriff. "Thought you'd like to know," he said. "The Cartwrights sold their house and moved out of town. Looks like they're finally throwing in the towel." The news brought a wave of relief. Their departure marked the end of their toxic presence in the community and a symbolic victory for everyone who had supported me during the ordeal. My neighbors organized a small gathering to celebrate, bringing potluck dishes and sharing stories of their own encounters with the Cartwrights. It was a reminder that even in difficult times, community and connection could be sources of strength. Reflecting on the entire experience, I realized how much it had taught me. I'd learned the importance of standing firm against injustice, no matter how formidable the opposition seemed. I'd seen firsthand the power of resilience, not just in myself, but in allies like Sophia, who had risked everything to do what was right. And I'd discovered the profound impact of a supportive community in weathering life's storms. The Cartwright saga became a local legend, often recounted with a mix of disbelief and humor. People would jokingly ask if my cabin was available to rent, and I'd respond with a laugh and affirm, "Not a chance." While the story's notoriety lingered, it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it served as a testament to the strength of truth and the importance of standing up to bullies, no matter how powerful they seem. One crisp autumn morning, I stood on the cabin's deck, sipping coffee as the first rays of sunlight broke over the lake. The air was cool and fresh, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. The peace I'd worked so hard to protect had returned, and with it came a renewed sense of purpose. Life, I realized, was too precious to be overshadowed by the actions of entitled people like the Cartwrights. And so I moved forward, carrying the lessons of that turbulent chapter with me. The lake remained steadfast, a symbol of resilience and tranquility, and I vowed to cherish every moment spent there. For in the end, the true victory was not just reclaiming my peace, but knowing I had stood up for what was right and emerged stronger for it. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow.